Nebraska Governor Jim Pillen wants to keep his job for another term. Pillen's announcement emphasized his income and property tax cuts and cracking down on DEI. The governor said, quote, "Nebraska is stronger, safer, and freer, but if you learn anything growing up on a farm, there's always more work to do." Charles Herbster, who ran against Pillen in the Republican primary, tells First Alert 6 he has not made a decision on if he will run again. Herbster's previous campaign was endorsed by President Trump. His team tells us a lot of Nebraskans want him to run, and he does not have a timetable to make a decision.